Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic, and I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode in our Fall Clean Sweep series. Remember, all we're asking you to do is make one simple swap this fall. Debbie and Laura provided some really easy, actionable steps you can take, so if you haven't checked that episode out, go one episode back and be sure to listen to that. I am fresh off the Integrative Health Practitioner Summit. I am now a level 1 practitioner. I'm in the process of doing level 2, and I also have level 3 on the docket. So I am feeling inspired and ready to share some of the game-changing insights I have picked up so far. This week, we're diving into a bonus episode on two of the hottest health topics discussed at the conference, EMFs and microplastics. These silent yet powerful threats are creeping into our daily lives in ways we may not even realize. But today, we'll break down what they are, what they do, and how you can protect yourself with some simple swaps and habit changes. To help unpack these dangers, I'm joined again by my co-host, Megan Rupp. Megan's the founder of Primal Health Consulting, where she designs personalized plans to help clients achieve everything from weight loss and muscle gain to managing autoimmune conditions and chronic fatigue. With over a decade of experience and a master's in health and chronic disease and physical activity, she brings incredible expertise to the table. If you haven't listened to our protein episode earlier this season, you'll want to check that out too. So today, we're tackling microplastics and EMFs, topics that might be new to you but are gaining serious attention as research continues to reveal their effects on the body. And what's the deal with elephants and clean swaps? And would you knowingly eat a credit card? We'll explain. Let's get started. Megan, welcome back to the podcast. Always good to have you.
So good to be back. I'm excited for today. It's going to be a fun one.
This is the time where everyone knows, if you haven't heard Megan yet, Megan and I take our side conversations, we call them rabbit holes and rants, and we now bring them to the public through this podcast. So Megan is here lending a hand for us in the Fall Clean Sweep, and to all of you who might be participating in it and trying to figure out what's a good swap. So we're going to dive into a couple of areas that maybe aren't the first thing that pops into your mind, but they're very important, and we're going to explain why. But in this general sense of making swaps, there's a lot of overwhelm, because I think I've been that person too, where it feels like all of a sudden you're doing something, you think it's fine, no problems, and then it's, no, don't do that, no, don't do this. So what's your best advice for those folks looking to make a swap? Remember, we're only asking them to make one right now, but we're going to draw attention to many. What advice would you give them to reduce the overwhelm?
Yeah. So I like to think of the saying, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. So don't think tomorrow you're going to wake up and just tackle your whole household and everything in it. Think, as I need to replace a product, what is the better or best option I could replace it with? Whether it's skin products, whether it's your cutting board, whether it's your Tupperware, take something that is on its way out in your house and let's find the better option for your health. Don't try to tackle it all at once. You'll go a little crazy trying to eat the elephant, as they say.
Well, and I know we've been involved in this for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did this start for you? When it drew your attention to suddenly, like, I should start thinking about this stuff, and maybe I do have to think about it. And oh, by the way, no one's looking out for me. I got to look out for me. And so when is the first time this kind of drew your attention?
This is a great question, because I really had to think back, because I've had an interest in toxins and toxin exposure and green living for a while. And when I was in grad school, I was taking a more leveled up nutrition course, and they were talking about herbicides and pesticides. And my nutrition professor told this story about atrazine, which is a common herbicide, and they were letting it leak into local riverbanks and lakes. And all of a sudden, the frog population just dropped completely. And it wasn't killing off the frogs. The frogs were able to survive with this herbicide exposure. They checked the males, they checked the females. It affected both of them, and they could not reproduce. And right then and there, I was like, oh my gosh, if they're spraying this on our food and our crops and things like that, and it's affecting these frogs, what is it doing to me? And how do I help others address these things? And that's where it really clicked that something needs done.
Yeah, and I think I want everyone to know too, we've been in the space again for a long time, but it's kind of endless. Like, I'm not there. I'm not where I want to be. I haven't switched out everything that I need to switch out. So it is like Megan said, you cannot do it all at once, because that is where the overwhelm creeps in, and then you hit the freeze effect and no one does anything.
Yes.
So it's very important to manage this. And that's why when I came up with the idea of the fall clean sweep, I was like, just one. Just one.
Yes.
Because even if you just did this once a year, you're a little bit goes a long way, depending on what you determine is the area that you're going to make a swap. And I also think some of these things we're about to talk about, which again, they're mainstream for us. They're in our world all the time, but they're not necessarily in the mainstream news. Some of these things can be habits that you're changing. It doesn't require going out and spending a bunch of money on a new product. So what I also think is dangerous about things like this, and even just exposure to these things over time in general, is we respond when there's pain immediately. If you were exposed to EMFs or plastics, which are the two topics we're going to talk about right now, if you were exposed to that in one time and you felt pain from it, you would stop, right? But that's not how it works. It builds up over time. So a little bit can go a long way. And again, the good, better, best, which I love, changing these habits along the way can make a big difference. So we're going to start with plastics, Megan, and we're going to talk here and we're going to tell you what they are, what they do, and then where they are and kind of how to clean things up. So we're going to start with plastics. Megan, what are these microplastics and plastics that we're talking about?
Yeah, these microplastics are so small. They're on this cellular level that you cannot see them. So if you can't see them, you don't know if you're ingesting or inhaling them. And they come from exactly what they sound like. These microplastics come from plastic. It was a recent study that showed the average human may ingest up to 5 grams of microplastic every week. And that is the size of a credit card. So that just goes to show you we are eating a credit card every week, potentially. And they said if you work potentially in a field where there is, a certain job that requires plastic making or plastic manufacturing, it's probably even more than that, because then you're not just eating it, you're literally inhaling it. And as a country, I think this can go down a rabbit hole. I won't make it. But in 1950, about 1.7 million tons of plastic was produced. And that's incredible. That's a lot of plastic. Now it's more than 400 million tons annually.
Holy cow.
It's insane, Christy. It's like, we know it's not great for the environment. It takes a very long time to decompose. So we have to think, what is it doing when it gets into our bodies? And that's the awareness I think we need to bring today.
You've got a stat that you talked about in here, and you said more than 400 million tons annually, and that the plastic industry generates over $600 billion, and that was in 2021. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it more has to do with just packaging. They said they couldn't even figure out everything in the study. It was mainly just packaging. So packaging foods, water bottles, packaging like in your shampoo containers. Like, think of how much plastic you touch on an everyday basis. And that was just in 2021. If anything, I'm sure the number is a bit higher now.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's gone up. And you can revisit, if you haven't listened to the first episode of the Fall Clean Sweep, we talked a lot. We talked some about plastics, but when we talked about the companies that we would buy skincare and beauty products from, the packaging is a big part of the initiative when it comes to those companies. Like Beauty Counter, everything was recyclable. And like my shampoo was in, I don't even know what it was made out of. It's recyclable, but it's not stainless steel, but it's almost like a steel, almost feels like it's a stainless steel.
That's
it's steel.
amazing.
It's not plastic. So that is part of the initiative, and why in that first episode, we were saying that when you can find a company that's got its eye on the target and they're checking all these boxes from an environmental and personal care standpoint, that can really help you in this area. But let's also explain to the people who may be hearing this and going, I don't get it. What do they do? What do these plastics actually do? So here comes the what did they do part. What do they do part of it?
This is such a great topic because, as we know, research in general is a funky topic here in the United States because it's a big question of who's going to fund the research and how long are they going to follow the research to know long-term components of what the plastic buildup in the human body can do. And research is mixed, but it is already startling to see that we know the body treats it as foreign particles, which they are. And when the body has a foreign particle in it, a lot of times inflammation and autoimmune issues occur. So the body doesn't want foreign particles. It wants what's in your body now to stay in and no foreign invaders, or else it kind of puts up those red flags. So right off the bat, if you're inhaling it, it's respiratory inflammation and asthma, and that is proven. Ingestion, again, more research is needed, but right now we know that there is evidence to show it can cause gastric issues. So stomach upset because the plastic can settle in the gut, especially if you're eating it. And they're starting studies on mice about it being actually an endocrine disrupting potential.
Yeah,
and
that is scary.
It is. And, we talk about endocrine disrupting potentials, and really what it boils down to, you and I talk about this all the time, but our hormones, it just directly affects our hormones. And I don't think we want that.
No, and the people have to understand too, some of this, like this is the body's response because it is trying to protect you. The body is doing anything it can to stay alive. So the problem in the society today is that it's so many layers, okay? There's so many layers that if you don't address anything, that's not an option anymore. It will manifest somehow. And I don't mean to be gloom and doom when I say that. But the thing is I think we take this so seriously and more seriously every single year I've done this of like, look, you don't have a choice. Doing nothing is not an option. And these plastics, you're not even thinking about a cutting board. You're not thinking about those things. You're not thinking about throwing a piece of saran wrap on your food when you put it in the microwave. God, do not microwave plastic.
Please don't do that. If nothing else from this episode, stop microwaving plastic.
Yes. Right. And we talked about that in the last one too. And I don't care. I'm going to repeat it because it's that important. If you're using plastic containers to store your food in the refrigerator, that's not good. So Megan, let's talk about some of these other areas that, I already kind of started off on that tangent, but what are these areas that we can give them to clean up besides the ones we just mentioned?
Yeah, no, I love that you opened the floodgates. Like, let's bring that tangent because, again, like we talked about, it can be one thing at a time. It doesn't need to be overnight. The first thing is the cutting boards. I mean, my parents, when I recently moved back into the area and, moved back to be closer with family. And the first thing my parents asked me was, what do you see as the biggest issue toxin-wise? And I said, the plastic cutting boards, because you see someone in the kitchen and they're just chopping and then scraping, and that plastic you can literally see. So it's not even micro at that point. It's full-blown plastic particles that are breaking off the cutting board, and then you're cooking it into your food. It is like you are serving plastic for dinner. So the first thing I say is, all right, you don't even need to wait until the plastic cutting board is falling apart. Replace it with bamboo or another really good solid wood. It's a very convenient and lower priced option. That would be the first thing I would do. But what about you? Bring us to the next one, Christy. What would you do?
Well, we did talk about water bottles a little bit in the last one, and that's, I will admit, when I'm on the road, I'll sometimes use water out of a bottle, plastic water bottle, and I admit that it happens. But I'd like to clean that up, but sometimes your means are not there.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that, again, if you're cutting it out when you are at home and it's just when you're traveling, or it's just when you just don't have another option, it's different. I try to find BPA. A whole nother topic is water in bottles and that efficacy and what's going on with that, because that's also not a perfect thing. But we won't get into that today because that's a whole separate podcast.
Yeah,
Megan and I thought we were going to do it in this one, and then we were like, yeah, no, that'll take like 30 minutes by itself. So let's do that one another day. The big three, air, water, and food could be their own episodes. So we'll try to keep those out today. But using a bottle that's stainless steel is usually what I will. So my water bottle is stainless steel. The one thing I would say, going back to plastics, just make sure what you're actually drinking out of is sometimes plastic.
Yep.
Okay. There's a plastic spout. And I know we're not trying to be anal here.
No.
But these are the things you have to consider. You have a stainless steel water bottle. I take the plastic spout that it has off and I drink out of the stainless steel.
Yep.
So I would say that. Would you say that for water bottles too?
Oh,
you can use glass water. I have a glass
water
right
bottles. Here. Yes, yes. And it can even be, lined in plastic for safety purposes. That's fine. But the actual orifice that you're drinking out of, the vessel, make it glass, make it metal, ceramic. Like, just don't have these water bottles that over time, especially think about it. Like, if you're using a reusable plastic water bottle, what is it going through? Are you shaking stuff in it, like electrolytes? Are you letting it toss around in your car? Because again, you're not going to see the plastic pieces break off. These are microplastics, naked to the eye. So don't think you're going to know when it starts breaking down, because it's going to be, as soon as you buy the plastic water bottle, it's already broken down.
Yeah, and we see this when we test. We'll see these certain foreign... I remember the BPA being really high when I tested, and I was like, where did that come from? At that point, I wasn't even really drinking much out of water bottles, but I was maybe like on the road, and I'm like, where's the BPA coming from, right? And you have these Tupperware things that say they're BPA free. I don't know. I just now avoid anything plastic. That's just kind of how it goes.
Real quick, just on that note, I had a patient maybe a few weeks ago, and she also tested positive for antibodies to BPAs. And she's like, I switched my cutting board. I switched my Tupperware to glass. I said, okay, well, what are you drinking out of? She goes, oh, that's my only plastic vice is the water bottle. She lives in Vegas, and she's like, I buy like packs and packs of the water bottle. We keep it in our garage that goes up to 100 and some degrees. And then we put them in the freezer to get cold. And I'm just like, you're basically causing the water bottle to be its own microwave. And then you're just cooling it off. I'm like, those microplastics are just leaching into your water. And that was just the one switch. And you know what? I think that's an example of just one switch that she did. That's a good one.
And bless their heart. But my husband used to buy the big things of water bottles from Costco.
Yes.
And then leaves them in the trunk of his car.
Yes.
And I'm like, where's the water? And he's like, it's in the car. I'm like, well, don't drink that now.
Yeah. You're in a warm temperate climate too. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah,
that's a microwave now.
No. And then, all right, plastic Tupperware. Tell us about that.
Okay, yes. And this was one actually in grad school too. That was the whole argument, because we would have long days because we had grad assistantship. So we would teach the undergrads and we would take our own classes. And it was the office argument where if you saw someone heating something up in plastic Tupperware, it was like the whole room stopped. And we kind of made jokes about it. But now more research a decade later, because that's how long it's been, has come out, and heating the plastic Tupperware. And then you think, if you're in an office and you're just using a fork and knife, now not only has that Tupperware been heated and breaking down those microplastics for you to ingest, but you're using a fork and knife to cut onto the warm Tupperware. Again, that might be worse than just the cutting board, because it's both whammies right there, and that's your lunch, and you're doing it on a daily basis. So as the Tupperware gets stained, as it becomes old, throw it out, get the glass Tupperware. Just be a little bit careful with it. Just get rid of the plastic Tupperware, especially if you're heating or eating out of it. That's my rule there.
Yeah, so it sounds like ditch the plastic is what we're saying, folks.
Yeah.
Ditch the plastic.
Especially if it comes near your mouth.
as much plastic as you can ditch, it's a good thing, especially if you're going to ingest it. So next thing on our list is, and no one thinks about this, but the good news is that thermal receipts that you get at stores, that's kind of been, they'll ask if I want a receipt now, right? And so now we have that option. No, you can email it to me. Go for the email. Don't get those thermal receipts, because they're not good. What is it about thermal receipts, so people know why that's a bad thing?
Yeah, it's literally even a thinner form, and the thinner it is, the more it's going to break off. And again, now this is going into your skin, because obviously we're not eating off of the receipt paper, but everyone forgets your skin is your body's largest organ. It is an organ, your skin. It absorbs everything. And that's another rabbit hole we could go down. But let's start with just handling receipt papers, like you said, email it to me, text it to me. I don't care. Just throw it in the bag and I'll put it somewhere when I get home. But that receipt paper is shown to give off much more microplastics than anything else because it's just so thin. It's a little terrifying there. I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, it is. And I've heard really horror stories about this. And people who've worked as cashiers, and it's not great.
No,
it's not good. So when they do ask you if you want your receipt or if you want it emailed or texted, choose that. That's the best way because you want to keep a receipt. I get it. Have it emailed. I just have a folder in my email that I keep, and so if I need those receipts, I just refer back to it. One thing I love about shopping at Costco, once you buy it on your Costco card, you don't need a receipt. Target is the same way. You don't need the receipt if you buy it on your Target card.
Walmart, I'm pretty sure, does similar. They could look it up. There's so many ways nowadays.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
And this is probably part of it. I mean, some of it is the digital, which we'll kind of get into in the next thing.
That's our next mountain to climb.
Some of it is the digital world we live in. Some of it is safety. The reusable tote bags when shopping, I think that's something I got to get better at. When I do run to Publix, sometimes I will get the plastic shopping bags and not think. But like Costco, we shop at a lot. And we have a tote, a zip-up tote that's thermal.
Yep.
So that it keeps our food cold.
Oh,
and
I love
use that there. But I got to get better at using that. I got to get better at using that when I run to the grocery store versus the plastic bags.
My boyfriend makes the joke because he'll go to like Whole Foods and he's like, guess what I forgot in my car? And I'm like, what? He's like, the reusable bags. I'm like, so he just drives around with the reusable bags and they just live forever in the trunk of his car. Kind of like your husband with the water bottles. I was like, okay, this just lives in your vehicle now. It's the intention that counts there.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. It's always the guys we have to help because sometimes they're not as, this is not sexist. It's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
We're a little more astute when it comes to this. So sometimes you can't do better if you don't know better. So you just got to help out.
Exactly. We're just helping everyone out.
We talked about filtering water, or we talked about water, and you talked. I know we can't. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but talk about the microplastics in tap water because it will blow all of your minds when you hear the water horror stories. It will blow your minds.
And this, I did a little research for today because I remember, again, like a decade ago, it being like 60 to 70% of U.S. tap water tested contained microplastics. And I looked it up, maybe thinking things got better. And most recently, in about 2022, it said up to 90% of unfiltered U.S. tap water contains microplastics now because of some of the way they treat it, and it goes through the piping that's plastic. So up to 90% in different areas. That's a little shameful if you ask me.
It is. It's bad. And one thing, I think I did say it in the other episode, but now I was trying to remember, but it just doesn't matter because not everyone listens to every minute of every episode. But one thing you can do, there's a simple way you can buy a tester on Amazon. But the other thing you can do is look up EWG website. You can put your zip code in and you can see what's in the water. And what I will tell you, it will shock you. And what's there is not even as bad as it is because that's well prior to it getting to your home. And so whatever it is, it's worse. It's not good. It will make you want water filtration and you should have it.
I love that because I love the patients who come to me and say, well, I looked and I actually have better water than the average person. And I'm like, have you looked at pipes lately? Do you know anybody who's a plumber? Like, just ask them what the pipes look like traveling from point A to point B, which is your home. So that is such a good point, Christy. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, it's look, I don't know anyone that's going to look at that and their tap water is going to be glowing. So
no.
it's kind of but it is a difficult road. And again, this is a whole separate podcast about how, because I'm going through it. Trying to find the right water filtration is a whole nother podcast, and we'll do it when we get the info and we feel confident in presenting it to you in a simple manner. We'll come back to that. And then last but not least, this is something I don't think a lot of people think about: packaged foods.
Packaged foods. So in a little bit more research that I was doing again, because I wanted to brush up on the facts, and testing and research comes about every year. they found that these packaged foods, obviously the plastic leaks into it. Because just think about how many foods are packaged, like salads. We think we're eating super healthy. Meats are packaged in plastic, and it's that thin, thin, thin plastic. And I will tell you, I read a little bit of a startling article that talked about when they were testing, when they were having to do like biopsies and lumpectomies and taking extractions of basically cancerous cells out of human bodies, they were finding microplastics in the cancerous like lumps and in the biopsies, and they were very similar in compound to these, like basically saran wrap, which is everywhere whenever we buy meats, fruits, vegetables, packaged foods, processed foods. It's in everything from organic foods to the processed foods. That's one that we need to take a look at as a country, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's really a can of worms that needs to be fixed. I mean, it really is. It's getting pretty serious. And then this next topic that we're about to transition to, this is one that I'll be honest, I never thought about, never knew until I was involved with the clinic, and I had no idea that this was a thing. Okay. So I'm going to bring them up, EMFs, and EMFs is probably something you're sitting there saying, I've heard of it, but I have no idea what it is. So Megan, give them the skinny. What are EMFs?
Well, I feel kind of silly explaining it just because you are kind of a pseudo expert in your field of EMFs and all of the work you've done, but I will break it down from the science standpoint. But EMFs are electromagnetic fields, and they are produced by everyday items from mobile phones, laptops, power lines, Wi-Fi routers, laptops, microwaves. So anything that is electric, but also anything that has to put a signal out. So us doing this podcast, we are surrounded by EMFs, and they're intentionally produced to transmit that information wirelessly over small or great distances. So we use EMFs every time we listen to the radio, watch TV, warm up food in the microwave, use our mobile phones, work all day. Christy, your career has spanned across EMFs. So
yep,
it's everywhere.
Yes, they are everywhere. And so again, this is going to get really daunting because we're not going to ask everybody to go sell your iPhones and go back to using a rotary phone. Even though it would be better, those it would be better. And, everything is Bluetooth. Everything is Bluetooth. So this is going to be the hard part. So I hope you're all sitting down listening to this. What do these EMFs do?
Okay, this is another one where research is evolving every day, and there are counter arguments to this, but I have to bring up that the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is a segment of the World Health Organization, they have now classified EMFs produced by cell phones, smart devices, and tablets, so certain levels of EMFs, as a possible human carcinogen. And a carcinogen is any substance that can cause cancer, like alcohol and cigarettes. So it is a group 2B carcinogen that is potentially linked to cancer production in the body.
And it's because, believe it or not, these signals, they're breaking down cells within the body, and it's leading to oxidative stress and leading to illness. And again, this is so silent. You have no idea that this is happening, right? And yet, my job involves a computer. My job involves my phone. If you can look up the number of towers near where you live. If you live in a city, it's even worse when you're in the city. So I do want to, before I go into how to clean this up, what are symptoms that can come up from this, right? That we have patients that have what's called mast cell activation. And a lot of times they are triggered by EMFs. So explain to them how the EMFs can actually affect symptoms.
Yeah. And I will see it on a small scale where patients are like, at the end of the day, that's when my migraines are the worst. That is when my nausea is the worst. And they're like breaking down what they're eating. And that's a great place to start. But I'm like, are you on a laptop all day? Do you have a phone held up to your ear all day for those EMFs? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, have we tried decreasing the EMF exposures? And they're like, no. And then on that grander scale, we'll have autoimmune patients who will go, like you said, into this mast cell flare where everything in the body is just on the defense because they have spent all day surrounded by EMFs. And that is, like you said, it is consistent cellular breakdown over time. It's, we're not talking about radiation here or sitting in an x-ray room. We are talking about low and slow breakdown of cells through these things. That's what it is.
Is the rule the more devices, the more exposure? Is
Yep.
that so the more Bluetooth, the more things going on? I have 2 Wi-Fi routers in my house.
Wow.
That alone is bad. One is in the wall, which might even be worse. I don't know. But I have inquired, why do I need the second router? Because it comes from the provider, and they haven't been able to answer my question. Like, they haven't been able. They're like, well, it needs to do this for the modem and this and that. I'm like, well, why can't the modem just go through the Ethernet and then I have my Wi-Fi? So let's get into how to clean this up, because this is tricky. Again, I'm not perfect at all by any means in this. This is a constant process. So let's talk about how to clean this up. What can people do right now to help mitigate their exposure?
Yeah, and this is a perfect topic too, because like you said, we are not perfect. Like, I have friends who have joked that my phone is an appendage. Like, it is attached to me from helping out, clients, work, social media, talking with you. Like, we are on our phones all day long, and that's not going to stop most likely. But here's the thing. When we sleep, our body rests, heals, and detoxes. So if we can put our phone on airplane mode, or at least don't sleep with it in your bedroom, that's a big thing, as well as not putting it in your pocket. I see male clients all the time who are with me for hormonal dysregulation. And the first thing I ask is, where are you putting that cell phone that's on 24/7? And they're like, right in my pocket. And I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to talk about hormone optimization and fertility, let's not put that phone near gentle and sensitive areas, if you catch my drift there.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I will admit too that when I was working for the Golf Channel and I was on the road, I don't have anywhere to put my cell phone except my pocket.
Yeah.
I don't have a purse I'm carrying around when I'm out on the golf course, covering an event, and it's not good. I mean, I don't do it now. The other thing that I would say, and I know I didn't have this on the list, but something you can do that I hear Dr. Cabral talk about all the time, and something I've heard in many, many places, I don't use my phone to my ear. I don't put my phone to my ear. I use speakerphone usually. If you're using Bluetooth AirPods, I hate to tell you, but you're not really solving the problem.
Oh yeah. I've got strong, again, that won't be the rabbit hole we go on, besides like, get some wired headphones, please.
Yep. Wired headphones would be better. Yep. And so you will see a lot of people still with wired headphones, and you're wondering why they're still using wired headphones. I have wired headphones on right now, not for that reason, but hey, I win. I get 1 point today.
Yeah. Again, it's these little things, these little bites that we're doing.
Yep. And there's a lot of things that have Bluetooth running and all the time. And if you're not using it at that point, what I would say is make sure to turn it off. That would be my other one. And then what else? What else can you give us?
I love 2 brands that I have utilized. One is Defender Shield. Defender Shield has cases and boxes you could put your phone in, and you could, again, if you have to have your phone near you, put it in the case, put it in the box. And the other one is Lambs. Lambs has EMF protective clothing that helps. So again, maybe we're not perfect, but if you have to work all day with the phone attached to you, maybe you get a hip case with an EMF protecting case. Maybe you get pants or a shirt. Like, Lambs has some really cool stuff that just blocks the majority of the EMF getting to your body. Because again, we're not avoiding EMFs here, but if we can decrease the ability of the EMFs to get to our sensitive areas, our organs, our cells, then right there we're doing a much better job than we were yesterday. And that's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah, this is probably my weakest area. This and the water. I mean, we're talking. We've mentioned at least 2 of the things that I'm the worst at today. Turning your Wi-Fi off completely at night is ideal. I haven't gotten there yet.
That's my next step too. I haven't either.
I'm putting, and you know what it is? It's the resetting of everything when I turn it back on. That's the only reason, and that's probably not a good reason, but that's usually what it is. There's so many things resetting, which already tells me there's too many things on Wi-Fi as it is, right? Airplane mode at night like we said, that's something I have started doing. And then if you can, then the next step is, can you keep your phone completely out of your bedroom? And so I think that's what's next for us. Also, too, when I was talking about the wireless phone and you were talking about the wireless phone being close to you, I was actually doing a little research for this. Dr. Cowden is really big on the EMF stuff, and I knew he had these resources on his website. So I did look him up, and Megan and I are going to link all this for you to read more. But on the website that he has, it is the Environmental Health Trust, okay? And it is all about reducing cancer risk from cell phones. So it's a thing. It's a thing, folks. When a wireless phone is close to you, more than 50% of the RF is absorbed into your body and brain. Do not carry a powered-on cell phone in your pocket or bra. Cell phones emit radiation constantly, even when you are not actively using them. And then when you're touching them, even with your finger, a good case for a stylus. Good case for a stylus.
Yep.
So those are the things I wanted to add to that. And then I know you've got a few more here that I want you to go through with the alarm clocks, the laptops, all that.
Yeah, use an old school alarm clock that's wired into the wall. I mean, maybe I'm showing my age here, but I mean, they were great. They were great. They were reliable. The only thing that you had to worry about is if the power goes out at night. But then, come on. I mean, let's. How often is that going to happen? The other big one that I tell both young men and young women is stop working with your laptop on your lap. I remember back in college, laptop on the lap. And again, if we're working on, because one day we're going to want to optimize hormones, fertility, for one reason or another. And these 18 and 19-year-olds that may not be on the forefront of their brain, but long-term exposure with the lap, that can decrease fertility and offset reproductive health. And then, like you said, we are a work in progress here. So these are small steps, but there is a good amount of research that we can also offset some EMF damage to help ourselves, like going outside, sunshine, fresh air, grounding. I'm sure you and I talk about these practices all the time, and they cost next to nothing.
Yep. It doesn't cost anything to go outside, touch the grass, touch a tree, get in the sun. So none of those cost money. And then red light, I live in the Sunshine State. When there's not a hurricane, it's usually pretty sunny here. I have a red light I use in my house at night for healing purposes myself. And it's hard for the average. I was talking about this at the osteopath today. It is really hard for people who have never dove into these things to really grasp that we're not full of malarkey.
Yes.
But there is no malarkey here. The other thing is, you mentioned the products that were helping with EMF. We're going to link those for you because that is a big thing with me. I think there's a lot of frauds out there. I would not do an EMF reducing product that you didn't get recommended by somebody who knows what's going on.
Yes, and that there's research behind and scientists who have helped develop it. Yep, those are the ones we're backing.
And I mean, I rely on you all, and I rely on the other folks I follow, as practitioners. We have people we respect, and we're following their information. So we're going to point you to the people to follow for these things so that you'll be able to do that. And then we'll point you to some products too. Grounding mats, you can get those if you're not getting outside enough, and you can do that. Your body has energy. There's energies here. And so the EMFs are like the opposite energy.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do a visual demonstration down the road on the rods.
I love that. Yes, we'll get into that because when people hear the rods, they've got questions about those.
Well, it's not podcast friendly if you're listening, so we're not going to do that. But maybe we'll do a social media one on that.
Oh, I love that.
And here's what Megan and I are going to do, and I'm volunteering Megan for this as I'm speaking. Megan and we're going to do an Instagram Live to supplement the fall clean sweep as I volunteer her for stuff. She's like, what are you getting into?
Volunteer me. Go ahead.
We want to keep this episode manageable, but we're going to do an Instagram Live on the tips about how to make these swaps. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that as an extra. Esther and I did some together on Instagram, and Megan and I are going to do that. But in the interim, Megan, tell them how they can connect with you in case they want to get in the weeds about EMFs or plastics.
Yeah, because this is something I can help you with your lifestyle, whether it's just to optimize health or whether there's some chronic issues you want to help with. This is my wheelhouse. Besides nutrition and exercise, the toxins and the EMF go along with it. So you can reach me at primalhealthconsulting.com, or you could reach out to my Instagram at Megan Primal Health. And I'd love to talk and help with anybody. We go down this rabbit hole. This is the fun stuff.
And until we meet again, Megan, thank you for joining in on the Fall Clean Sweep and for helping clear some of this up. That's a wrap for this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. I'm sure it was eye-opening to hear the impact of microplastics and EMFs. But remember, the goal is not to live in fear, but to take some simple steps to help mitigate the risks and the overall impact on your health. Be sure to visit the show notes. For many of the resources and products we talked about, you can find those show notes at christyhugic.com/podcast. While you're over at my website, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter and you'll receive a Fall Clean Sweep PDF resource with clean swaps you can make. Remember, just one swap. Also, feel free to reach out and ask more questions on this topics on Instagram at Whole Health Christy, and you can follow the series of lives I'm doing over there on this topic. Next, spread the inspiration, like, follow, review, and share this podcast with others who can benefit from this information. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.